Like Joseph and Shemai and Wolfie.
Okay, my name's Courtney Boyd, and I'm here with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Center. And today is July 27th, 2022. We're here with, can you tell us your name again?
My name's Kevin Lesley.
Kevin Lesley. And can you spell that for us?
Kevinlesley.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. So I guess we'll just start off, if you could tell us a little bit about where you were born and your childhood and a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. So what they tell me is my mother decided she didn't want to go to the hospital, so she elected on a midwife, and in a little spot between Ashland and Hickory Flat, Mississippi, she tore the little balls on the bedpost loose during my entrance. So that's where I originated from, and lived there about 15 years. Moved to Ashland for a few years in my later teen years, and went to Ripley School. Although I was in Benton County, we had some family in a little bit better school situation there in Tippah County, so that's where I landed and spent my school years. Sure. So what more?
Could you tell us a little bit about your parents and what they did in town where you lived?
Okay, so my mother divorced early before, actually, probably the first year. So Dad wasn't around much. Mom was, I think she was a little factory worker, sewed buttons for some factory there in Hickory Flat. I'm not even sure the name or where it was from, but we were a working class, poor white, coming up in a rural area. So yeah, that's what they did. We didn't come from money or education or any of those things. I was certainly working class, and that was how she raised me. That's what I became early on. Started working early on in that. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Was your mom involved in any unionization or anything at the places she worked?
No. In these small towns, unionization is not as commonplace. So none of that. I don't know that she was ever even approached, and she'd been at a couple of different factories. So I'm not sure how active the union was around our parts, certainly in that time. So no activism, very introverted, worked because she was the only one that was available to. So yeah, that was the driving force there. And had they approached her, I don't think that she would have even known what they were talking about. So.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your adult life? What things you're involved in, or, activism in your own way or anything like that?
Oh, well, now that is, that'd take a while to unpack there probably. So could you be more specific in your questioning?
Yeah, so, where do you work and what kind of things do you do?
Okay, so right now I am a project manager and caretaker of the Hugh Craft House here in Holly Springs. This is a antebellum home from around 1851 or so, and so I manage the restoration or preservation would be a better word there, and we're maybe shifting to hopefully doing some community building out of that. Maybe help bridge the divide here in Holly Springs, where racial tensions still exist, and who knows what all vices and speed bumps are still here. So I have taken a career of maintenance, construction-based stuff, and used it to do the work of community building and just people building and those type of things. So that's what I care about. That's what I want to do. Kind of doing a little bit of it right now. So that's the summarized version.
Great. How have you seen the way that the Hugh Craft, is that how you say? Mm-hmm. The Hugh Craft home has changed over time in terms of the stories that they tell to people that visit the place, or how have you seen it evolve?
Well, because of how the ownership of that particular place was, it didn't have a whole lot of outside of the family activity until the early 90s. And and then that person only had it for a couple, 3 years. What they wanted to do didn't work out, and it moved into another private hand that had it for 20 years, where they, through research and a lot of research, found that it had enslavement quarters there on the property, and where it had been forgotten as that. So that was a new thing to the story, and through that thought process, that owner was able to help found Behind the Big House, where a lot of education is coming out of that, really educating the community. So that's also a new thing. I think that came on maybe, and I may not have the dates right, 09 or 12, well, somewhere in that gap. But it's changed in that way, in that before the focus would probably be the antebellum white of it, but Behind the Big House tries to tell the story of how things really got to be what they are, and what is largely not spoken of enough. So those are some ways that it's changed in how it encapsulates the work that I want to do personally, and in the foundations that are at work doing that now. So sure.
So you mentioned leaving Hickory Fort at around 15, 16. Yeah. Can you give us like a timeline of how you ended up at the Hugh Craft house from there?
Wow. So we're going to let me roll for a minute.
Yeah,
on
what
this.
did you do?
You picked a good question. Let this guy talk. The construction side just developed out of necessity. I was a young guy, 14, 15, you can't go get a job at your grocery store or the fast food place. So you find labor jobs that they don't care how old you are, just show up. So I started in roofing, one of the hardest professions around here. It's hot, it's high, it's dangerous. But it's easy to get a job if you're willing to work. So I went into that and just trying to learn to do those things well. You end up taking on more and different projects, and if you're capable, blessed to do so, you might even learn how to do it pretty good. So that's what I did over the course of my teens and 20s through various outlets, some of my own self-employed, and then others for different little outfits, and learned the business side, learned the sales side, the doing, the supervision, just all the moving parts. And I think I was able to apply those in life, and got me pretty rooted and grounded in a a good church with good pastors, good leadership, people around me. And man, they churched me up and used all those talents to change your job into your work. And so I'm not sure when it happened, but I did recognize that that everything that you do should probably move you towards what you feel your purpose is, what you feel your work is, your passion. If you can get all those things kind of together, you might get a purpose out of it. And so if you can start applying that as early as possible, you can have fun earning what you earn and meeting who you meet and flowing with what comes along and making the best out of all of it and enjoying that, so it doesn't feel so jobby job. That put me on this opportunity with these guys. A job here, a job there, just put me in the right place, and I found that all of my thoughts, ideas, plans aligned a lot with those guys there at the Hugh Craft place and the foundation that purchased it. That was Rosa Foundation at the moment. And I think they're working with North Mississippi Roots and Wings organization to do some continued work in this field. So we ended up in Holly Springs because we felt a calling to the place. If you're from here meaning any of these surrounding counties, if you weren't born in Holly Springs, if you don't have deep ties to it, married into a family, whatever, you wouldn't move to Holly Springs. It had a little bit of a stigma on it, certainly in the communities from that I was rubbing shoulders with or living in Ripley. Every day I'm spending my time after school on West Street in the all black neighborhood and really the poor side of town, playing ball in the streets and all that. But I come back to my area and things are just a little different. I don't. One, just the demographic is different, and so I didn't really have. I was seeing two different sides of life, even at a young age. So all of that teaches you in my surroundings that you go through Holly Springs, but it ain't somewhere that you really you'd ever build shop at. So coming here, I think I came to do some leveling work on some house, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I need to purchase this place. Now, not move here, purchase this place. Old 1880s, nothing, shack, just about. No reason to do it. No, it didn't look beautiful, but just felt a calling to the place. And so we did acquire it. Thought, well, maybe we'll put some kind of business there, coffee shop, I don't know, something. No real direction, just that sense to do so, to get it. Circumstances flipped in 2 or 3 months later, and our very solid situation, living situation, changed, and we needed a place that at least temporary to stay. And so we whirlwind ourselves into that house, try to get it kind of livable, and did, and moved in, not as part of the plan, not as any vision that we had ever had, but there we were. Out of the full house, I think we had really one functioning bedroom, maybe two. The floor was a little questionable in that. We had a living room, finally got a pretty good bathroom, and we were having to work out of a not so functional kitchen. So not everybody was on board with making this move. And apparently the Lord thought it funny to only talk to me about this stuff and not really share any of the other things with anybody else, making me stand alone. Yeah, I just think I don't know, I just think we ought to be here. Here.
If I may pause you, who's the we?
We. My wife, Michelle Lesley, okay, and my little 10-year-old Molly Lesley. So Mama's not wanting to move in a potentially dangerous situation, not safe. The house is not together. But they did it, and they tension included. We didn't divorce, and slowly relationships started being formed, and acquaintances and business endeavors and just this and that, and slowly we acclimated to the place, and then the work started becoming a little more clear and a little more clear. We'd cook something up, me and my wife, and go pick some of the projects, and we'd just go sit right up in the middle of it. Just pull up, middle of winter, set a table out with some hot gumbo and bowls, and just sit there and serve people. Most of them just drive right by. They wouldn't stop. White folks out here trying to, I don't know what they're doing, but no, don't want none. And then, but some would, and we'd talk, and we'd just relationships. And so somewhere, this was 17, I think, that we got here. And somewhere between there and here was a buy-in with everyone. And even though there wasn't a whole lot of clear direction of what the work was to be done, we just knew that we were part of it and are part of it, and hope to be driving forces into the future. So that's how we ended up there. There you go.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And do you still live in that house currently?
I'm there now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're there now, and we still have the other that we're renovating and hope to do just more of the same. Second verse, same as the first. Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned that your faith meant a lot. Could you tell us what faith, what denomination?
So I guess if I had to say, if I had to title it, maybe apostolic. Some people have said Pentecostal, but it's not really. Apostolic does well. I guess a brief description is just trying to get back to the primitive version of Christianity without all of the stuff, all of the without all of the religious rigmarole that may or may not just be fluff, just repetitive prayers that may or may not even mean anything. Just so a departure from the blown up church idea, and just get back to the people. They had talked about in a later book of Acts that it was like a community that was built. Those that believed, they went from house to house, and they would have meals house to house, prayer house to house, just community. If anybody needed anything, then they brought all they had, and they just kind of put it in a pile, and as a need occurred, they took care of the need, and so that's where the community building part of what we're doing, I think, was probably birthed, was just trying to follow that early pattern of the church, thinking that if you want what they had, then do what they did. So you said denomination, and I try to leave that because it just puts things in our way. Christian works good. I like that, and I think if all of us could get to that spot, then we might could do something. But there's just so many different segments of this and that, and man, it seemed simple and reasonable to just go back to the beginning and look and see what they were doing, and that message is pretty simple. It was all about the people. It was all about community, and not making one higher than the next, or one lower than anyone else. And I like that. That there's no black, white, brown, purple. There's just people. There's just Christians. There's just, or not even that, just people. Yeah. I think we're all on some kind of journey. Whatever segment you're in, whatever, or if you're not in one, we're still in pursuit, I think, of some of the same things, some of the same questions. And so with my faith, it just helps me find commonplace a little bit easier with people, and it takes if I lean on the spiritual side of that, it takes all of the human junk out of it. And so that's what I try to do. Yeah.
So on the note, I'm Patrick for the record. On the note of trying to build community, you mentioned before that you were trying to educate the community with your work at the Hugh Grant House. Could you elaborate more on how you would plan, or how the organization plans on educating the community here at Holly Spring?
Yeah, and I can talk about some of that. Some of it's not been quite rolled out yet, so we'll save a little bit. But I think when you go to some of these places, these historical sites, there's all the information that you can read, about them, and there's the little funny little stories here and there. Colonel Murphy stayed here, occupied the place during the war, failed miserably. Van Dorn's raid, he gets blamed for the whole thing, gets canned afterwards, and so you tell some of those stories. It's topical, people like it, and okay, fine, we'll do some of that. But I think we're more interested in telling the history that the house has been present through. So it was built, I think, in 1851. I could be off, but I think that. And so, man, there's a lot of stuff that's happened since then. And Holly Springs has been just a depot for everybody that's been affected by it, or maybe even responsible for it. So what was Holly Springs like the night Medgar Evers went down? What might a story have been during that time, during that night? So we'd like to imagine some of those things and tell some of those stories, so that we can. We want to drip truth in on as many people as possible, and we can use this thing that people are very interested in as a tool to just tell a more broad stroke of history. And it's just a big prop to do that. So I'll say it that way. Yeah.
Just a question. On the note of just historical markers and just history in general, do you find yourself identifying with any historical figure, or seeing a historical figure that you admire?
No, not that I can think of. No, I'm trying very hard to not do that, and to try to take a more kingdom approach on everything. So I don't want to do the things I want to do. I don't want to be the things that I want to be. I want to become what God wants me to be, and used how He wants me to be in the place that He wants me to be. So if I make some great person in history my ceiling, I think I'm robbing God of what He wants to do, can do, will do to me, through me, whatever. And so although I think of and recognize all of these great people of the past that's done a lot of great things, and I'm so broad in maintenance. You're doing all kinds of different stuff, so you learn to do all kinds of different things, and so that kind of bleeds into everything else. You want to learn all these different people and what they did, how they did, and then learn about what they were doing. And so there's only so much capacity that you can do, you can have, or use in doing that. So if I just respect all those guys, learn what I can from it, and then hopefully apply that to just being whatever it is that I'm supposed to be. And that includes removing a lot of my wants. Man, I don't know what I need. I don't know nothing. So I really try to take that into everything. I don't want to limit myself by doing that, if that answers your question. Good question. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like to work with the Behind the Big House project? And can you also talk about how that relates to or contrasts with the pilgrimage tour that people do? And
Man,
if you have any particular stories of like what that experience has been like.
Don't exactly specific stories, no. And so I'll clarify. My involvement with Behind the Big House started as just someone who stumbled onto it in 2019. They had, I don't know, we were just out taking in the community and saw a few cars out, and this fella kind of up the hill a bit was dressed in what appeared to be slave attire, and he's at this fire. He's kind of standing there with the obviously blacksmith type, hammered metal ladle, and he's just working that little stew. What's going on up there? And I see the sign Behind the Big House, and University of Mississippi. They're up there. They've got the GPR doing some stuff in the lower parts of this enslavement quarters, and boy, that seemed pretty impressive. So I walked up there and got involved with that. Involved meaning I ate the chicken he was cooking, and whatever else he was stirring up. Y'all come get this chicken now. Michael Twitty, a well-known, I guess, how does he call it? I don't know how he describes it, but a culinary historian, perhaps. And he was in the middle of an interpretation of how things were done, and so that was the first taste of it, and I was hooked from that point. They come up 2020 for the next one. Hey, I don't know if you heard, 2020 kind of went south. So COVID blew up everything with that, and it looked like it was going to disappear. I wasn't involved. I just showed up. Okay, well, everything has developed now with Hugh Craft House, and now the organizers, well, they're needing more involvement, newer people. I think the owners of Hugh Craft, they had moved to Virginia. It was very hard for them to manage that, and so it's kind of changing into different hands of different passion, but still kind of telling that same story. How it contrasts with the pilgrimage, I don't know personally completely, but while trying to find the pulse of Holly Springs, you hear a lot of things, and I can say that whether this is true or not, the perception is, oh my gosh, the perception is that the pilgrimage is very white and it doesn't do enough to tell the right story. I know that it has had its success, and it was a viable thing for a time. But I think there's a better story. I think there's a truer story. And I think that behind the big house and the work that Hugh Craft House is doing and will do will be to attempt to cut through all that white. That's probably not going to, it will either change the direction of the pilgrimage and force them into a different spot, different story, or it's going to push them out. But I'm on record to say I'm okay either way.
Could you, this is Kristin Anderson.
Thank you, finally.
Yeah, sorry.
Now I know who you are.
Could you describe Behind the Big House for anyone who doesn't know what it is?
Okay. Well, I'm probably not the perfect person to do that, but from what I've gathered, it really attempts to do what I described before. It wants to tell how the big house became the big house, how life really functioned. Many of these houses were built very skilled craftsmen, tradesmen. The thought and the primitive engineering has made these structures that's lasted through a lot of stuff. And all this time, it's kind of, it seemed like you were glorifying a lifestyle really more than you were restoring a house. You were really reviving a story. You were reviving a time of the past. And no matter how much money, how much time and effort you go to putting into these houses, unless you do it a certain way, you're almost just really puffing up the thing that really ought not be puffed up too much, talked about so much, or at least emphasized. And okay, so, but if you do, great, they're beautiful places. Well, how did that happen? Who was doing that? Because I haven't heard anybody talk about it much. Oh, well, it was built by slaves. Really? So who were they? Where'd they come from? We'd like to tell that story of, you've got these amazing craftsmen. Well, these are, the craftsmen are living in the shack beside the prestige, and they're the ones living with this two-sided fireplace that burns 24 hours a day, every day, whether it's winter or summer. Winter might be all right. Summer, probably not so much. These are the people that built the South with their prayers, with their work, with their perseverance, with their patience, with their tolerance. And that creates a state of mind that people have grown through, that has tethered them to something they should have never been tethered to. So Behind the Big House wants to just start peeling the onion on all things that encapsulates. That's as many personal stories as we can find, maybe interpret. Any of the lost parts of this, of where we are now, how we got here. Behind the Big House wants to tell that side. Like I said, I'm not the perfect one. There's people that could run on for even longer than I do and make more sense at it, but there you go.
So at the house, is it a separate tour, or is it a special program, or how does it work with the rest of the place?
So how it has been, and who knows what it will be, but how it has been is they would try to get as much interest towards a date. Maybe they would schedule something with Ole Miss, let's say, and they would try to have some kind of archaeological thing going on and invite just an open door to the community to come in and just be a part of that atmosphere while there are interpretations going on, culinary interpretations, perhaps how the nannies would care for some of the children or whatever. And so those interpretations would be going on just while open public could walk through, come and go anytime. It was a free thing. Just come up here and learn something. They come because they want to see, well, the house is open. Maybe they'll let us look at this. They come for one thing, and we give them something, a little something else, in a good way. You leave with something you didn't plan on coming for, but the stuff we want to drip on folks can bring on a whole paradigm shift.
So you described the house as an antebellum house. What does that word mean and entail for you?
I think technically it just means a pre-Civil War home. I think I'm not an expert on the field, but you say antebellum, then there's two things happening. It'll put you in a time frame, but it also puts you in a life frame. It really frames how things were, and just shines the brightest light on the worst moments, really, of how the country was built, how it was funded in that time period. So although there are all of these great things and interesting things, learning about them, I don't know how it cannot change you in some way. So it means a couple things. There's the architectural side of it and all that history, but you just can't get one without the other, or you shouldn't get one without the other. That word, it means two things all at once. It's like a two-sided edge going through you at the same time.
Very true. So do you know what they know about the house when it was still in antebellum period, how it was run, or any of the people who were enslaved?
What they're saying is, I think we've got they took inventory, and that's how they taxed folks. So the inventory says that Hugh Craft was a slaver, and he owned 9 slaves as of the time of that census. Now, we can't be exactly sure if that's so because they stopped counting men and women as inventory once they reached the age of 60. And so there could have been other people there that were enslaved, but they didn't count. So I guess they had lost their usefulness, so no longer paying taxes on those guys. It had a little service stairs built from the basement all the way to the roof. And you can see this from the inside now. But one of the first things that fascinated me about how things were done was the separate set of staircases. And this is everywhere. This is in many of these houses. And you can look at the differences in the service staircase and the real staircase, the official. Always colder, always just chippy, narrow, do the best you can. So even in the construction, you can see the mindset of, in this case, Hugh Craft. I wish we could know how he was. We like to imagine the best parts, but we don't know. We don't know if that was the case. We don't know who did what. We're not sure what craftsmen were here or there, what they did, how they did it. We know he was he worked for a land company, come out to do those type of things. So I believe they were probably just there for mostly the day-to-day and raising the garden from which they all ate. They had I think built a fairly large family, so I think that's how that it functioned. He wasn't a plantation owner that just had a social house here in town. He was here doing the work that he was sent for. So he didn't have that separate thing like many of those guys did. I think most of that residence was mainly just working the day-to-day around the house. But that's my limited understanding of it.
This might sound like a loaded question, but given everything that you have learned thus far about the house itself, could you perhaps paint a picture as to how it would have functioned? You described some of it, but could you describe how day-to-day life would be like living in this antebellum home?
Well, Chesley Thorne Smith wrote a book I think it was published in maybe 96, A Childhood in Holly Springs, I think is the name. That book details a lot of the sounds of the time. She talks about, I miss the sounds of the roosters, just the chickens. You never hear the chickens anymore, but you would hear those things. And the sounds have changed from hand saws to these motorized things, and they're just horrible, she's talking about. And Chesley was born in the house, I think, in 1910, I believe, and was there until she was 16. So much of what we know about how things might have been is through the living memory of she and her grandmother. And they would talk about a big difference they notice is when the radios come along that used to, all the doors would be open and people were out on the porches and it was, the evening entertainment was community. It was all interaction between, house to house stuff. Everybody's doors open, everybody's outside. And that's just how they function. The radio comes along, doors are shut, everybody's inside, and it's the beginning of where is it at? Of this, right here, isolating ourselves from one another. She tells a story about that, and noted that being a thing she really missed. Missed the community, and boy, that's something to learn there, and really take stock of where we are and how we do things. No, I'm not going to ask you. I would ask one of these other. If a guy, a guy asks for your number and then he calls you immediately, like, call me? Are you serious? You're going to call me? You didn't text? Like a direct call first? Are you insane? This is a crazy, I've got a crazy person. Because it's, no, just everything. We're so personal, yet we want to have this loud voice. We don't take the time to form the relationships. We lost that interaction. And so learning that through that book, it was thought-provoking. And there's a few instances that she details in that. The foods, the all of the sounds, just the way things are done, the changes to the city hall. I wish I could tell you more about the day-to-day operation, but one could look back at what she's left in that, and many do, and use that for a pretty good picture of what the turn of the century, just before and just after, would have been. So I might send you towards that direction for that.
I'm curious if you could share a little bit, this will probably be my last question, a little bit about, and this is Courtney Boyd, a little bit about...
Name first.
Yeah, always forget that part. A little bit about your path in life and how you think that is similar or different to your mom's, and kind of just a little bit about, like, your life in those ways.
Okay. I moved out early. I got married early. I'm probably 18. I've got one child. 19. I have 2 children. And I myself am itty bitty. I'm just a kid. And my sister was having some challenges with addiction. My dad had those same challenges, died early from it. My stepdad that come along also had challenges. Okay, she did not. She work, come home type of person, very sweet, introverted, but much of the people around were not. And so early on, I was forced to be in more of a leadership role, far beyond or before my time to be. And you start doing anything early, do it long enough, you get a little bit better at it, a little bit better. And so in one way, to answer your question, just on a leadership standpoint, I've probably departed from any of my family, including my mother, in that regard. Probably felt more of a calling into ministry than she did. She's probably a talented singer. Probably. We're not 100% sure because she just won't put it out there enough. But I kind of was forced into a spot at a church where they needed a drummer and a singer, and I could do both a little. And so musically I developed in that way. And again, you start something early and do it a lot. I mean, they call anybody an expert that does something for 10,000 hours. Well, man, you can put some time in and get pretty good at something, and I did. I participate with the music at our church, and it's kind of a pretty significant role there. That's something that she could never do, would never do. Okay, and then as it pertains more to the topics we've been on, you might say, are you prejudiced? I asked my mother, maybe. She would say, no. Are you racist? No. No. And I truly believe that that she doesn't harbor any of those emotions. But she might also describe her childhood as to that's just how it was. That's just how things were. And a lot of people say this. It's like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's just something that's just how it is. That's just what Daddy called them. That's just what we always heard them as to be. Now you see the language I'm using. Now she doesn't have any of those emotions that's tied to that, but there's just a nurture that has produced something that many people just can't see. They can't see it. They don't know those things are there and what those things even are. And she's a good representation of that. I would say that she's not a racist. I would also agree. She's not prejudiced. She has a huge heart, and it doesn't matter who it is. But there's also some other stuff that was planted in there from generations. And I didn't know there was supposed to be a difference. I didn't know. When you would hear the conversations distinguish the difference, but as if there were sides, that was the first time I experienced that as a young person, maybe 13, 14, 12, 13, 14. I don't know. I had to deal with the idea that she don't know there's some stuff up in there. And I don't know. I just wasn't willing to accept that there was a difference. And that probably is what put me into the afternoon football games in the street with the guy that I befriended. We had the same birthday, and he was mixed, adopted by a black family. Sweetest people, like my family, were my family, as much as my mother. For those hours, and then that's that. Then I got to go because I can't stay in that neighborhood past a certain time. It ain't good for me. But that taught me something, and so I kind of departed from any idea that there's two sides. Okay.
Kristin again.
You got it.
Do you openly share your opinions on like equality or like what you've learned about history? Do you do anything like post on Facebook, talk to people at your church?
So I'm very careful to leave myself available for anybody that wants to share anything from any perspective. And while I have, everybody's they got political views, they've got all that stuff, but I find that most of the time I fall pretty well in the middle on everything, and feeling the comfort of that, I took it on more and more as to not be so hard-lined on some things, other than fairness, and try to debunk the whole idea of separation. So those things, yeah, I don't mind standing up for, and probably could do a little bit more on that, but I'm trying to save a piece so I can operate in the atmosphere that I'm in. I very much like to gather information from people, true, raw stuff. And if they think you are this or that, you are what you look like. In most places around here, it's very topical. And I'm careful not to look like anything. I want that. I want to be able to move and research and have conversations and build bridges without someone thinking I have an agenda. And I don't, past bringing us together. So outside of maybe that statement, I'm a bridge builder. That's what I want to do. It's what I'm going to do. And I don't feel like I have to take a hard stance on anything. It's just I've learned that most of the things that I did, they were modified, and it changed, and my opinion grew. And so if I can look back at those times and apply that to now, it makes me say, well, I probably should leave a window open on everything. And that's even the other side of the race conversation. I want to hear what makes people feel like, why are you angry? Why are you hurt? Why? And I want the truth out of the guy that says, I'm from here. My granddaddy's from here. My great-great-granddaddy was a colonel in the Confederate Army, and he's buried right over there. I'm from here. I want to be able to talk to that person and get truth and also give truth. But I want to also cater to any other side of that perspective. Man, I don't want to be boxed in by any hard opinions on all that, because I know they could change anyway. Does that answer your question? I hope so.
So in your, growing in your journey to pursue truth and kind of bridge gaps, have you faced any backlash from people that you've kind of educated?
But I suspect this is probably going to cause a little bit eventually.
Yeah.
Probably.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. There's probably been a couple things said that has not been talked much publicly yet, and so we're almost there. And I was somewhere and in a business, and I think we had a Juneteenth thing coming up. That's what it was. I'm like, are we getting ready for the Juneteenth celebration? I'm in this business shopping, and they said, oh God, that is this weekend, ain't it? Hey, whatever it is, some name, don't forget, we got to close early that day because we don't want to get trapped like we usually do. And so, oh, that's right. Yeah, there's no way. I'll tell husband. Then this person yells across the counter, "Don't forget, we're out of here." All right, we're on it. And they looked at me when I said that. But like, you preparing for the Juneteenth? And it was one of these. Yeah, like, can you believe this junk? Man, they just go overboard. And it's a business that's pretty well established, been around for a while. And I would think if you are a business that's going to be anywhere near some kind of public event, you probably stay open later, get business that you need, I know, and a little bit different approach, but it was a completely different take on it. And I was really surprised by that. And they looked at me as if there was some kind of camaraderie. Like, we know how we handle this, and then we let them have their thing and whatever. And that's right here today. That's today. That was shocking. Maybe that's not personal backlash at what we're doing, but it definitely gives me a glimpse into the challenge that's ahead. As you go to these towns, and many times they're still ran by folks that's been around for a long time. So if you want a bank loan, well, you got to deal with the folks that's been in business since 18 whatever. And maybe this guy with the white and the mustache and the beard and the ponytail can go in there and he can come out with a check. And the next guy looks a little different. They're the ones writing the checks. So it's a little different. It takes months for them. They got to go online to make something happen. I'm giving you an example. I'm talking in general, but I know that this is a real example from somewhere local, right here. And so these are your businesses. This is where you're having to shop. This is where you have to eat. This is where you have to do business, borrow money from. And all of that nature is embedded into it. So I suspect very much that there will be backlash. Because anytime you challenge that, and you challenge the power, you're gonna get fought for it. And it doesn't matter what the message is. If you try to, if it feels threatening, then man, I hope you got another source. So I know what's coming, and we embrace that. And that's what change really is. I don't think you can have it without it.
Well, I've only got one more question.
Right.
You mentioned having a daughter who should be in her teenage years now. How do you talk to her about history and race, and what is your goal in educating her as she grows up?
So she just turned 11, actually. When we moved here, it was whatever she was. Now 11 as of July the 9th. Coming in to Holly Springs was not a great experience for her. The house was not put together as I described. She has no friends. There's no one there she can interact with. She doesn't go to school there. She is not going to school there. She already had things going somewhere else. So it was very difficult years from 17 to now. And moving into Hugh Craft House, for me, looking at where she is, I hoped, and still hope, that the history will force her to start looking for herself. I want her to imagine all of the stuff, the good and the bad. I don't think she probably even knows much of what the bad is completely, but I want her to ask the questions. I want those to form from within her without me having to push it on her. And so she just recognizes about a week ago that we have a library right across the street from us there. Sad that it took that long, but it did. And so she knows it's there now, and her friends are coming over. We're going library, get in the car. That's what's up. And she comes back with this book, A Good Kind of Trouble. You're aware of this? That was exciting. I got tingles now. Like A Good Kind of Trouble. I'm like, I didn't know about the book until I could read the title. And I think I know what this is. And so, yeah, it is what I thought. And so that it was very exciting that's the first book she brought. Ain't nobody talked, ain't nobody said nothing to her about anything. She knows the basics. She knows some stuff you can read about the place, and I try to kind of tell short stories that might spark interest, but not much. And there hadn't been a whole lot of it right now, but that's the book she comes back with. So she's a little brainiac, and I think we're in a good spot. I think we're in a good place with her now that she's getting more comfortable with the place. The home offers her a little bit of a better environment in that way, and it's so thought-provoking to be there that it looks like it's working. And she is she is a protector. She's not gonna fight anybody unless you mess with somebody else. She won't fight for herself. She's a pushover. Everybody runs over on that part, unless it's an underdog, unless it's somebody that's getting pushed around, or it's one of her friends, or maybe it's not a friend at all. It can be anybody. And immediately she goes into this aggressive, defensive mode, not for herself, but for that person. That's pretty exciting too, you know? So if you start combining some of these ideas that she appears to be pursuing herself through whatever natural interest has occurred, it looks like we're set up pretty good for her to land well. Gucci? All right.
Yes. Well, if you have nothing else for us, thank you so much.
I've said enough.
Thank you so much for interviewing with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for